So, today is the 8th of November, and Joe Biden is the president-elect, so that's awesome. Honestly, I listened to both Trump's and Biden's speeches on, Friday, and the speeches were just non-comparable to each other. Trump's was all about him and Republicans and about how they won, and it was a conspiracy theory against them that they didn't win, and he had like completely baseless claims of fraud and talking about how they're winning all these lawsuits when the lawsuits are getting thrown out of court because there's no evidence. And even if there's a minute amount of voter fraud somewhere, Biden won by so many millions of votes that it's ridiculous to think that, 5,000 votes here or there is going to actually amount to anything, even if there was fraud, which so far there has been zero fraud, like any evidence of whatsoever. And he was just dejected and acting like everyone was his enemy and just spewing nonsense and conspiracy theories and talking about how great he was. And then he went to Biden's speech and he's all like, let's stop demonizing each other and let's come together. And whether you voted for me or not, I want to work for you because that's the job of the president, is to be for all Americans. And it's just like articulate and not about him. It's about the country and about how we need to come together. And then his acceptance speech today, he didn't talk about himself. He was praising everyone around him. He wasn't going on and on about how great he was. He was going on and on about how great the country is and how great democracy is and how great the people around him are. He, again, was more articulate, and he was not spewing a bunch of conspiracy theories. He was saying, let's come together, let's be not enemies, just countrymen. I teared up a little bit, just the difference. Like, he keeps talking about a return to civility and decency, and quite frankly, it's needed. Like, I keep seeing all of these people who are upset with Biden winning and that he was the only option and that he's not nearly progressive or left-leaning enough. But what those people are doing is just as demonizing as the people who are extreme, crazy, white supremacy, racist, far right. Like, it's detrimental. In reality, Biden will probably be a boring president. I've said this. I already said this. But at the moment, I genuinely think that's what the country needs. The country needs to stop pulling apart and start coming together and pushing a whole ton of like left side progressive things. Yeah, that sounds awesome in theory, but in reality, there's a whole bunch of people who just spent the last 4 years screaming and shouting and ranting and raving and now feel like they're going to be demonized or something because they disagreed. And disagreeing with another human being does not automatically mean you have to be enemies. And yes, there are fundamental human rights that are being argued against by some people. But the majority of people, the average human being in this country or another country, is just trying to live. Just wants to have some acceptance and happiness and health and have that for them and their family. Like, they aren't looking to start wars or be aggressive. And I feel like Joe Biden is that really average person who just wants to live and be happy, and for everybody else to live and be happy, and for us to just be content. And yes, that means compromising, and yes, that means a bunch of progressive stuff's probably not really going to happen. But at the same time, our country is so wounded by the constant conspiracy theories and accusations and hurling of insults and bullying. I think we need some time to just settle before we start pushing for progression. It's okay to heal. I feel like the election was this really dramatic surgery, and we need a recovery time after a surgery. I mean, Trump was like a cancer of one side against the other, of blue versus red, almost like a gang war, except on a national level of I'm right and you're wrong, therefore you're like my enemy. Like, we need to recuperate. And Joe Biden is the quiet grandpa-y looking pediatrician who's here, who's just like, hey, let's take it slow. I'll write you up some physical therapy. Let's do that. Yeah, we're gonna do some therapy. Get you back on your feet. I feel like that's all he is. I don't expect him to be something more than that. And all of the left-leaning people who are complaining that it's not going to be progressive, I don't know how they thought it was going to be progressive anyway. Even if Bernie Sanders got voted in, or someone even more left-leaning than Bernie Sanders, the country is not in a state or position for a big, giant progressive movement. It's not in a place for that. The country is recoiling from hundreds of thousands of deaths from COVID-19 and people being broke and hurting. It's not in a place to just jump off a great foundation. It kind of needs to recuperate and build a good foundation. I'm kind of frustrated with both sides. Like, people on the far right that I'm related to spewing nonsense about all of this voter fraud, and there's zero evidence for any of it, talking about how Biden is the Antichrist because his birthday matches with such and such Bible verse, and they're trying to, like, act like it's the end of the world that Biden, the most boring dude, just got elected. He's not the Antichrist. He's just not. And then they're acting like, you know, everyone who didn't vote for Trump is a traitor. And it's like, Trump is not America. America's America. Trump's just a dude. He's literally just a man. He's nothing more than a man. In reality, the country is the country. I mean, it's pretty pathetic that the voting, like, we had the biggest turnout we've had in 120 years, and still, like, 30% of the country didn't vote or something like that. But even for all the people who did vote, you know, the most votes for Biden, he broke Obama's record for the most votes on a presidential ticket ever. Biden broke Obama's record. But even besides that, 74 million plus votes, even besides that, it was still almost like 50-50 down the middle. Like, so much of the country was not up for going back to civility, and that the president is supposed to carry himself with a certain level of, like, deliberate dignity and grace toward other people, and treat all Americans fairly, even if you're not part of the same party as him. Like, that's what Supreme Court justices are supposed to be too. It's disturbing to me that people expect, like, for instance, Amy Coney Barrett to vote all completely Republican, when in reality she's supposed to be completely nonpartisan if she's being elected into that position. And I realize the woman was completely unqualified. She only had 2 years experience. It was literally just them trying to shove her in 8 days before the election. They didn't give a crap about whether she was qualified or she was going to be nonpartisan. But the job is actually to be nonpartisan. The job is actually supposed to be you help everybody. I am not against that. And I've seen some left leaning people who are like, oh no, we need progression. And I'm like, yes, some progress would be nice. But in reality, we need to set up a foundation for progress to even grow. Because if we start trying to shove a bunch of progress down all these people's throats who are still living day to day on the flaming, fiery frenzy that is conspiracy theory land, that they're not going to do anything. It's just going to be a stunted growth. It needs to be good compost that we're planting the future and not crappy dead desert dirt. Like, I think people are being ridiculous. I still would obviously gladly move to another country, but Joe Biden to me is a not terrible direction for the country at the moment. It kind of needs a moderate, temperate, mediocre kind of a presidency for a little bit. I think that's good. And at least he is acting like a world leader instead of like a petulant child spewing nonsense all the time. I mean, that all by itself will hopefully gain us a little bit of world respect, which is always a good thing to have because the United States is not the center of the universe. There are 200 countries on this planet, and we act like we're the only one. Stupid. I want things to change, but I want things to change in a good way and not change just for the sake of someone being right and someone being wrong. Speaking of changes, I still haven't had anything, and this week is the appointment to talk to the doctor about it and try to switch stuff up and hope that he doesn't be dismissive. I'm trying to not be just completely depressed, but I'm struggling to not get upset. I went to the girlfriend's to avoid having to all be there and try to worry about keeping the place clean and everything for inspection, and then I don't actually know if they came. They usually leave a letter, a paper, saying that, hey, they were here, and I didn't see one when they came in. So now I'm worried about tomorrow, that they're going to just show up or something, but I don't know what to do about it. Like, there's literally nothing I can do about it. I thought about just cleaning this whole place, but I feel like that's just a frenzied OCD thing. It's not actually gonna fail an inspection. It's just feels that way because I feel like a failure in general. I feel like not being able to transition is sort of like affecting how I feel about a lot of things. And I'm trying to not let it just do that because I know it's just dysphoria and that I had hope and I got disappointed. And when I get excited about things and I get disappointed, I fall really, really hard. I crash and burn. I'm trying not to do that. The election's at least a little distracting from my personal disappointments. It just feels like everything I do is wrong. It just doesn't work out and it's just in vain. But then I look at these people being extreme and I think, well, good grief, at least I'm not that crazy. Like, I don't understand how people get so completely detached from other people. I'm not even around people very much. Like, I spend most of my time like isolated, in my own apartment, and yet I don't view people as harshly as they view each other. And they're around each other. You would think they'd rub off on each other some and learn to accept each other, and instead they just echo chamber themselves. People, the majority, are not evil, they're just trying to live. And that's true of every country in the world. Like, and people in this country, some of them are just being crazy. They're acting like God's a Republican and the devil's a Democrat and blah, blah, blah. That's not true any more than it's true that all Republicans are trying to destroy the world and keep the world from being able to survive. I mean, they're both extreme statements, and I keep seeing them a lot. And there's a big call for unity and for coming together and to stop the division and be the United States again from Biden. And there's so many responses to that of, oh, F no, for the last 4 years, these people have been like absolute whatevers. And then the other side's all F no, oh no, we've been demonized and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, guys, stop, 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 stop. You're acting like toddlers fighting over the same toy. Stop being red in the face. Stop throwing tantrums. Just share the liberty. Share. Come on, shake hands. Hug it out. Okay, share. And you might just find it's fun to play together. People are just acting like fools. I don't know. Today when I was walking over by the Erie Canal, there was these, I think they were Iranian, but I'm not sure. But I think they were Iranian. It was like this grandma and this mom, and, you know, they had a baby carrier that they were pushing, and then there was this little boy, he must have been like, I don't know, 3-4 years old. And he was hopping on one leg, but he wasn't really like staying with his mom, but he was super cute. He had like this red, too big for him hoodie on, and it was like really adorable with those giant brown eyes, you know. And so I saw him, you know, not staying with his mom, holding his mom's hand like she kind of wanted, and jumping on one foot and stuff. So I jumped on one foot. He looked at me, I looked at him, and I just started jumping on one foot too. And he just went. It was so cute. It was so funny. And so then he stopped jumping on one foot and went and held his mom's hand, and his mom was very happy about that. Like, when I was walking back the other way, she was all like, you know, smiling at me, nodding her head at me. You know, she was very pleased. I don't know why I have a way with children, but I do. But he just would look at me like, oh, wow, you interacted with me. I'm not sure how to respond to that. Just treated him like a normal average kid. It was funny. Brightened my day a little bit. He's a really cute little kid. I wish I was that cute when I was a kid. Anyway. I've been getting misgendered a lot lately, and it's frustrating. Or having people like look at me confused because they're like, I see the boobs, but I see the beard, but I see the... I'm not sure. And that expression is... It's gratifying that they're not just automatically assuming that there's a girl there, but it's still, like, just... I don't know what to do about it. I don't know if there's anything to be done about it. Except talk to the endo and be like, yo, doctor, listen, I had more changes after I started taking a men's multivitamin than I did on this testosterone gel you gave me. That's pretty sad. That's pretty sad. I want to get started and get going, and get to the surgeries and get through this so bad. And there's other things I need to be thinking about. I'm saving up money to try to fix our car up a little bit because our car is kind of falling apart, but we can't afford a new one, so, or, a new used one. So, I gotta try to work with the one I've got, and I gotta try to figure out the whole name change thing, what I'm gonna be able to do about it or not, and a whole bunch of other stuff. But I'm just trying to get a handle on myself and on dealing with my disappointment and my frustration and grieving. But who knows, maybe it'll all go smoothly with the doctor and he'll put me on a higher dose of tea and put me on the injections, no problem, no qualms, no dismissal, and it'll be fine and it'll work. And it's not that I'm like messed up or something to the point where it won't work. And the name change thing, not even an issue. They're still doing it. And maybe the car will magically not be expensive to fix. Yeah, that's pretty outrageous. That's as likely as someone being like, "Oh, here, have this new car." Like that's pretty much the same likelihood. In reality, I mean, I'm going to be talking to a mechanic, and I'm in New York, where the tax rate on stuff seems to be pretty high. It's going to be expensive, but oh well. At least, things will pass inspection and be more functional. Hopefully, the apartment passed inspection and they just forgot to leave a paper. And they already came. Maybe. I don't know. I was feeling pretty crappy about myself, but in the speech, Biden, his speech made me tear up a little bit because hearing a president speak, with some semblance of eloquence and not talking about himself the whole time or accusing people of being monsters the whole time was refreshing. But Kamala, her her smile, first of all, she was so happy. Oh my gosh, she could not stop grinning. Like it was nice to see how freaking happy she was. But also she said, that you should be who you are even if people don't understand you and they've never seen it before, because they'll catch up eventually. And you be you. And I know she wasn't talking about trans stuff, but at the same time, I don't know. It made me feel a little better when she said that. And Biden, in his speech, mentioning trans folks for the first time I've ever heard a president involve trans folks in a speech, so thanking them, I should say. Obviously, I've heard presidents say not nice things about trans folks, but that was nice. It was really nice. Anywho, I'm really okay with the president-elect and vice president-elect. I mean, they're not perfect people. They're flawed. Everybody's flawed, though. At least they're trying. And to me, trying is what's important. I don't care if people are perfect. I care if there's progress. And they're trying to bring people together. And that is an unenviable task in this country. But they're trying. And I am for that. I am for trying. So they're not perfect. It's still monumental. And I'll take it. And with as shitty as I've been feeling, I will take it gladly. Also, man, the election, people acted like it was some terrible thing, that it was dragging out for days or whatever. And I don't understand, because, like, tons of states were still counting. The only reason people cared about Nevada, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Arizona, the only reason they cared about these states was because it was close in those states. And they acted like they were being, like, slow on purpose to create drama or something. And it's like pretty much all the states are still counting. Like, it's pretty normal that they're counting, and they're recounting and stuff like that. But I mean, Biden's so freaking many votes ahead. There's not much chance of a recount changing anything. Of course, Trump, being the sore loser that he is, because it is against his nature not to create some sort of drama, is trying to make all these lawsuits that are being thrown out of court because they're baseless and there's no evidence. And, it's funny because he's been for months and months and months trying to create this perception of election fraud in an election system that has a 0.025% fraud rate. Like, it's extremely low. Like, extremely low. It's so crazy to me that he's doing that. And then now it's here, and he screams, "Oh, I've been telling everyone for months. We all knew for months that it was going to be fraudulent." And it's like, no, you've just been crying wolf for months, and you're crying wolf now, and you're hoping that if you cry wolf enough times, that a wolf will actually appear. And now he's trying to create a election task force thing, asking people, have you found any voter fraud, or times where you saw it? If you saw something, please tell us. Because he's trying to make a wolf appear. He's trying to, after the fact, come up with evidence of voter fraud, because there was no evidence to begin with. So he's retroactively looking for evidence. It's just so completely egregious. And thankfully, a lot of Republicans are coming out and saying this is absolutely shameful behavior. Because half the people who are counting at the poll stations are Republican. It's not like everybody who goes and counts the polls are all Democrats or independents. Half of those people voted for you, and you're accusing them of fraudulent behavior. That's not a good look, buddy. It's really not. It's pretty pathetic. So he's trying desperately to get the Supreme Court to jump in on it, but he's already kind of ruined his chances with the Supreme Court, because he was demanding a stop of the count, and then he was demanding them to keep counting, but in both situations, he still would have lost. So I don't know what kind of a case he thinks he can take to the Supreme Court, because he doesn't really have one. If he wanted the Supreme Court to only count the votes, like when he said stop counting, Biden would win, and because Biden was ahead of him at that point. Or if he wanted the Supreme Court to say, oh no, they had to count all the votes, Biden wins, because Biden's ended up ahead of him still. at the end. Biden was ahead of him the whole time with all of this stuff. Um, Trump was ahead in a couple of key states, but Biden's been ahead in all these other states the entire time. Like, as Trump's numbers basically stopped at 214, and Biden's just always kept being higher than that. Even if he wasn't to 270 yet, he was still ahead. And it's like, I don't know what kind of a case Trump thinks he has. He's just doing what he's doing because it's dramatic, and that's his nature. And unfortunately, way too many people in this country have gotten to the point where they just feed off of drama. Personally, I don't like drama. I don't I don't understand why so many people are so uneducated about how voting works. Mail-in ballots are completely legal. In fact, Trump votes with a mail-in ballot. Like, each state has their own rules about the election. It it's not universal across the board. Just because your state does something one way doesn't mean every other state does. It's just silly how much people don't get educated about anything, at least in this country. Anywho, I'm excited for civility and for the conspiracy theory thing to just hopefully calm the F down. Conspiracy theorists and drama makers and accusers and all of this hoopla is just not my thing at all. Just not interested in it. And I really hope a lot more people get disinterested in it. I really, really hope so. It's not a good look. The rest of the world just laughs. I don't blame them. I don't blame them at all.